Hi there, I'm Sarami with So and I am going to cut one of the ideal bags out with you just to go over some of the details because it is a pretty full-featured bag. So I have both the bags I've made in both sizes here so you can see the difference, comparing them. And here is your packet, your PDF download. And I know you probably got to that one page, with the all the list of the pieces and you went, oh my God. Don't worry, it's not that hard, okay? So you have the first couple pages give you a bunch of tips that I give you, and the first questions you need to answer, like what size, which flap, things like that, and then it goes right into the pattern. So here are the two bags. This is the full-size bag, the one that you all requested. It's a pretty large bag. The measurements are on that pattern list. And this is the elastic flap here, so it hugs the sides right there. And then this is the one that is 85% size, which I erroneously say 80% often, but it's really 85%. And you can see all the features in there. You can see on this one I put the water bottle sleeve on this side of the bag. As I am right-handed and I would wear this bag on this side, it makes kind of sense. My water bottle's right here. I also put the zipper on this side of the flap as well. And you can flip that over if you are a lefty or you wear your bag on your right hip. So let's get into how to deal with your PDF. So first of all, this is your overview. This is basically your pattern envelope. And you have your list of all your pattern pieces in the fabrics that they're for, and maybe you're not even using all these fabrics. You have all of your notions, the yardage requirements right here, a little small group of pictures, and the finished measurements right here at the top. This is a pretty traditional pattern card you see in the pattern industry. So when you're reading through here, you'll see that all of the pattern pieces are lettered to kind of help with confusion. And you'll also notice that if there's an A up here in the outer fabric and an A in the lining fabric, that's the exact same pattern piece. You may treat it differently. Maybe one has notches and one doesn't. But if you notch both, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. I walk you through all of this in the sewing video. And you may also want to consider padding the laptop sleeve if you're using that, or interfacing your fabric if it's not very heavyweight, or you're feeling like, oh, this might not have enough body to be a really sturdy bag. So there's some yardages and pattern piece lists for that as well. And I think that covers everything, so we're going to get right into cutting it. I'm going to go over the notions as well. All right? Okay, first we need to deal with our PDF here. It's quite a few pages and we're going to tape some of them together, and some of these pieces are on the fold when they're cut on the fabric as well. So the first thing I like to do, and you can see the one I printed out here is the 85% size, just so that it's a little more manageable on the screen here, and you can see everything I'm doing. So the first thing I would do is go through all of these and trim off a lot of this excess paper. Just get rid of it, recycle it. I tried looking for a way to condense pattern pieces on a PDF, and it's just not really possible. So get all of your pieces together and keep track of them, right? So this one's the A, and just keep the A's together and the B's together if there are any, and you will be just fine. Oops, unless you cut off your pattern like that. So go through, trim down all your pattern pieces, and then you're going to look for all the ones that need to be taped, just like this one. And I would trim one edge. Just make it easy on yourself. Use a ruler, fold it back, whatever you like. Line up your A's just like that, and tape it. And don't be too stingy with the tape if you don't want to be frustrated with using your pattern piece. You can see this one is also on the fold, so make sure you note that. If you highlight it if it helps. And now the other thing I like to do with all my pattern pieces, and I do this with lots of different patterns, is I actually like to look at what it's cut in and then highlight that so I don't forget something. Especially, we have this nice little list right here that tells you these are all outer fabric, these are all lining, but it says it right here on the pattern page. And if you want, you can color coordinate like that so it's less confusing. So for me, black is always outer fabric or the main fabric or self. It's referred to as many things. So because I don't have a black highlighter, because there is no such thing, I'm just going to go like that, put a black mark right there. This one also has lining, so I'm going to put a blue line for that. And this one also has interfacing or stiffener, so I'm going to do that as well. And I use red in the pattern for interfacing, stiffener, or padding. It's just something to kind of trigger that you need to look at that closely. So you're going to go through that on all your pages, and do that. If this one's only an outer fabric, put a little black next to it or underline it, whatever works for you, or a symbol or something like that. All right, so we've taped all our pattern pieces together. We're going to cut our notions in just a second, but let's just look at these. We have 3 piles here. One is just outer fabric, and I have B, C, D, E, and I in here. And then I have a lining pile because if you are making the zip pocket flap, you will have 2 pieces for the pocket that is lining only and cut and nothing else. All the rest of the pattern pieces are going to be in this pile here. Hopefully I didn't miss anything. And then once we start cutting them, we'll keep segmenting them to make sure that we're not missing anything for lining, interfacing, or stiffener, or the optional padding for the laptop sleeve. And so we have all of our pieces here. You can see I taped them together, matching these markings here, the circle. And the fold line here, in a lot of cases I just trimmed it off so we could see where the fold is when we place it on the fabric. If you find a pattern piece and it has a grayed out text, it means it actually has a companion, and this is the main text right here, and you're going to tape it together. So if you see anything that's grayed out and it's not taped to another pattern piece, it needs to find its companion. Let's see, let's look through here a little bit more. It's a lot of pattern pieces. The water bottle sleeve is another pattern piece we need to talk about. If you're making the 85% size bag, you might want to leave this sleeve full size and print it out again at the 100% or actual size. Or you can hold this one up and see how it works with your water bottle. Just remember it goes around the bottle and attaches to the side here, just like this. So if you want to pinch this at the 1/4 inch seam allowance on the sides there, matching up the seam line, you can slip your bottle in there and see if that's going to give you enough of a pocket. You can also make it taller. So this is a piece that you can customize to fit whatever you're using. And just remember you have your 1/4 inch seam allowances, and you may want this taller or bigger so that it can fit your bottle. And let's see, I think that's everything. So let's go over our notions, and then we're going to cut our fabric. Okay, the wonderful world of notions is huge, especially when it comes to bag making. And I've been around bag making for a really long time, and I worked in the outdoor industry where we had the most amazing assortment of findings and notions that you ever did see. And I still haven't seen it all. So I'm going to just go over really briefly what this bag requires, because you may have never heard of a 3-bar slider or a loop lock, and people call those things different things. So that's how I was trained, and it could be called something else. So for the bag that I sewed in the video, I used a 1.5 inch really lightweight webbing, so I actually backed it with a grosgrain ribbon. And then here is my loop lock right here, which is a square loop. And then there's an end of the webbing, and then there's this security band, which can be any width, and my little handle on the back. So that's the basic stuff, and the 3-bar sliders right here on the strap. So let's look at what these look like when they're not sewn on the bag. So a 3-bar slider, the one that I use on the bag, is just like this. It's got the 3rd bar in the middle, and this makes it so you can adjust your strap. You absolutely need the loops at the end in order to be able to adjust the strap so that the strap can slide through and get bigger and smaller. It seems really logical when you're doing it, but when you're looking for all this hardware, sometimes you think, do I really need that? And you do, especially when you want an adjustable strap. Now, there's ways to get around using some hardware, because maybe you don't have the same webbing width that you do for the 3-bar slider or the loop lock, and I go over a little bit of that in the sewing video. You can use a loop lock or a 3-bar slider as a loop lock. Right here at the end, you would just put this end through the bottom and then the strap through the top, and then you have your loop if you have a bunch of these. The other thing is you can salvage buckles and things like that off of clothing that you're donating, or maybe it's too damaged to donate. You can take the hardware off and save it. You'll start seeing it everywhere and grabbing it when you can. And let's see, so these are all loops right here on this side here. You can see they come in a variety, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. I can't stress that enough. And you can see here I have all kinds of 3-bar sliders here. For the bag I'm making today, I'm going to use an old belt buckle, and I took off the little toggle that goes through the holes of the belt, and 2 loop locks because they match the best for the bag that I'm making, and that's how we're going to do it. I'm also using 2-inch, 1.5-inch wide webbing here, so all 3 of these need to match whatever webbing that you're using for the strap. Now, as far as the little handle on the back of the bag goes, or the sides right here, that can be anywhere between 1 and 2 inch, whatever you have on hand, and so I have those here. So you have a little bit of flexibility if you like, and if you only have 2-inch for these, that's fine too. You can always sew it together at the top right there and kind of pinch it in so it's a little easier to grab. There's ways to kind of be creative about using the findings that you have on hand. I know it can be a little overwhelming and expensive, so I always recommend trying to find what you have on hand and making it work. Once it's put on the bag and there, it looks like it should have always been there. So, all right, and so let's see, what else do we have here? For the zippers, I'm using a zipper by the yard, and I know that's pretty unconventional, but I have hundreds of yards of it still, so I'm going through mine. So just know that when I have a zipper length in the findings list or the notions list, that is the length of your overall zipper tape to tape. But if you can get it to where the zipper closes all the way to the end and opens, that works as well, and we can sew across the teeth when it's too long or too short. And then I show you in the sewing video also how to add some ends, like little tails at the ends here, so then we can turn it under and edge stitch it, and we don't have to turn under the zipper teeth. So you need to think about what zipper teeth you're using and how sewable that is. If you're using a brass or something decorative, make sure that you are kind of keeping that in the back of your head, whatever we're sewing, so you're not sewing over something you probably shouldn't be sewing over. All right, so I have a few different zippers. This is for the Precious Pocket, and it is 2 pockets, but it is only 1 zipper. And then we have the angle pocket and the straight pocket on the front of the bag. And then we have the zip pocket for the flap with the pocket if you're using that. That's what this is right here. And then we have elastic that goes on the elastic flap. I'm giving you notions for both right here. You're only going to pick 1 flap. You need 4.5-inch long pieces of elastic. This is 3/8-inch elastic. Anything you have on hand is going to work pretty good. You can just make the little casing that it holds wider if you need to, or narrower. It'll be just fine. And then same with the gusset pockets. So I wrote on the findings list 3/8 to 1/2 inch wide, just somewhere in there. You'll be fine. 1/4 inch, 3/4 inch. I think you can kind of fudge it. It's not clothing, it's a bag, and as long as you're willing to kind of be creative about it, I think it works just fine. All right, and so I have my hardware here. So I have the 2 ends. That's what these go to. So I got the shorter ones like this. That's what that looks like. And then we have the strap, which is going to be for the big buckle. This isn't the most ideal 3-bar slider, but I think it looks pretty cool. Then you have the security bands, as I'm naming them, that go across right here on the sides. And you can see mine is much longer because this is the 85% size bag that I'm holding it up to, and the one I'm cutting. But I cut the findings for a regular full-size bag because I do have a little extra. I can trim that off. But if you're really cutting it close, hold it up to the pattern piece and see. The strap, you probably want to stay the same there. The zippers, you know, they're really not getting much smaller. And this is the back handle. And then these were my samples here. Last notion that you need is bias binding. So I'm going to do a really quick little tutorial on cutting some. You only need about 1 yard. This right here is a fat quarter, and you can get about 5 yards of binding out of a fat quarter. So the first thing I do, and I have a dedicated video for this if you want a slower and more thorough demonstration. I always cut off the selvage, and then I fold it like this. So this right here is the length grain of the fabric. This is the selvage right here. That was the fold of the fabric up there. So I'm going to fold it, selvage edge to cut edge of the fabric. So length grain to cross grain. And I turn this so that this fold is facing me, just so I don't get kind of lost in the sauce with these. And then I stack up my folds. I just keep folding this right on top of itself, and I stack up the folds just like this. Hopefully you ironed your fabric. Now, if you're using doing a really big piece of fabric, you can fold this a couple times. This is probably sufficient for the fat quarter. Now, I like to kind of just somewhere a little to the right of the middle of this whole piece, I cut it in half almost. And so I'm lining up my ruler so that it's perpendicular to this fold edge here. I'm going to cut this off. And because I'm right-handed, I'm going to stack this now, these cut edges right on top of each other, just like that. And I'm going to turn it because I'm right-handed, just like that. All right. And so now I'm going to be using this nice straight cut edge, and hopefully this perpendicular to this fold still. And I'm going to cut the bias binding width that I want. And today it's 1 3/8. So I'll just cut this. And just set it aside just like this. And you can cut your fat quarter pretty quickly. There's lots of ways. If you get little pieces like this, keep them if you want or set them aside. They start kind of getting in the way. Just make sure these cut edges are all nice and lined up. Don't monkey around with your fabric pile too much. Just kind of get through it. Hopefully the phone doesn't ring or the dog run out the front door, because you kind of want to finish this project right here. So now this, you can see how kind of this awkward amount here. If this isn't quite the width you need, this is what I do. I always open this up. You know, it's a little wiggly, so I could have probably done a little better on lining up my fold to that edge, but it's going to be okay. So now I fold this down the middle, and now I do another perpendicular line to this fold because I need to true up this edge right here. Get rid of it. And again, I'm right-handed, so I have to put that cut to my left hand, which is holding the ruler, just like that. And so now I get one more pass, just like that. And then you have tons of binding for whatever project that you're going to be doing. And we only need about a yard for this. Okay, we're good to go on our findings and our notions. So now we're ready to cut out the bag. Let's do it. Okay, I obviously have switched something up here in the video. I decided I wanted to re-record the lining part of cutting this bag because I could do a better job at illustrating what to mark and what not to mark. And you'll see later on in the video, especially when I'm cutting the outer fabric, that I refer to some of the mistakes I may have made. So I'm fixing it here and now. All right, so I have just some sample fabric here for what I'm going to use for the lining. So you'll see gray later on in the video when I stack up the pieces. And that is what I'll use to make that bag. All right, so the piles of pattern pieces I like to have here is I usually take out this long side piece because it's kind of can be a troublesome piece to fit on your fabric if you don't think about it a little bit ahead. And I usually put it off to the side right away and kind of cut off what I need for that, or kind of keep it in the back of my head. This is my little stack of pattern pieces that are just cut one. And it's the pocket flap lining if you're using the pocket flap, and the water bottle sleeve, which remember you're going to print out at the full size and make sure it's the size that you want for your water bottle, and then the gusset pocket flap. And then I have the back pocket and the cord pocket, and then the front, the back, the laptop sleeve, and the flap that you're going to be cutting out. All right, so I'm going to cut this piece off. This piece will fit across the width of the fabric no matter what size bag you're making. And if you're making, if your fabric's even wider, you obviously have plenty going across. And you can also cut it this way. The grain lines on the fabric are just a traditional grain line, but in bag making, the grain line's not going to make too much of a difference. So if you need to rotate this 90 degrees, go for it. Just be aware of any motifs if you have a directional print. So you might want to make sure of that. All right, so I'm just going to cut this off and then set it aside. And now for the rest of my pieces, I'm going to just start layering or lining them up on my fabric, because I know these are both on the fold, and this is 2 layers of fabric. I'll have enough if I cut this piece off here like this. And for this smaller bag, you can pretty much get the lining out of about a yard of fabric, a little less than the full-size bag. All right, so we have the cord pocket here. I think that when I do this kind of like in little chunks, it makes a bag like this with so many pieces a little easier to cut out. And so now I have this piece here, and I can look at some of these single layer pattern pieces, see what I can get here. So I can get that, and maybe this gusset flap, because I'm only going to be cutting one. All right, so I'll cut these two first, get them out of the way. And if you need 2 gusset flaps because you want to do 2, don't forget to cut 2 out. And this is the zip pocket for the pocket flap. So if you're not cutting that, you don't have to worry about this piece. There's not one on the elastic flap. And on this piece in particular, you're going to mark this box on the back, the wrong side of this piece here. And so what I like to do, I'm going to use a washable marker here so you can see it. I like to draw the line, fold it back on that line. I'm just going to draw the length of it for now. And now I'm going to use my ruler for the rest. Because I have this confined little arc here, and this pocket for the smaller size bag has been scaled down a little bit, I need to add that length back to the pocket so I can get my hand inside of it. For the full size, you won't have to do that. Just trace off the bag or the pocket, the box on the pocket, by kind of folding it back and then fold it on the end. So I'm just folding it right there on that end and drawing right on the fabric, however you like. So I'm going to make this box 5.5 by 1/2 inch wide. I'm centering it in between this line here. So it's 5.5 by 1/2 inch. And you only need the box. You don't need to draw the other lines that are drawn inside that box there. And it's on the wrong side. There you go. I know that's a little bit nerve-wracking doing those kinds of markings. You absolutely do need it. You can't skip it. So don't wait till later and decide, oh, I'll make sure that that's correct before I do it. You absolutely need to be able to sew that pocket. And it's a lot easier to do it from the pocket lining side and not marking your flap. Alright, so this is the back pocket lining. Don't need to do that notch there. Here's the cord pocket. All the pattern pieces are printed as if you're using the fabric right side up. This is particularly important for the outer pieces if you need to do any markings. All right, so now we have another row of pattern pieces here, just like this. We'll cut this off, and same thing. Start stacking them. I'm not necessarily stacking them, but lining them up and cutting them out one by one. So now we got to a piece here with the interior corner. And if you're using a rotary knife, you know how these can be really tricky. So what I like to do, use a weight as well. I'm trying to go really quickly today. But you can fold up. So cut into this corner here and fold it up. Just push your blade against it until you want it to stop right there. And then now you can go straight across from that folded up corner. This way you ensure that you cut all the threads that are right there in the corner there, and you don't cut into your pattern piece. This is fine when you're just going to cut out 1 or 2. Not so fine if you're cutting out maybe, 30 bags, but it is totally possible with just 1 layer or 2 layers. All right, so that's our laptop sleeve. Here's our front. You don't need to worry about the notch on this one either. It goes to the gusset pocket only. I may mention it in the video when we're cutting the outer fabric. There's the front. And then turn your fabric right side out. And then here's our water bottle sleeve and our other zip pocket. And just make sure your water bottle sleeve is the correct size for your water bottle. go. Now in most cases, I just consistently either decide that I want to cut off the line that traces the patterns, this heavy black line, or I leave it on. Just be consistent with whatever you do. This is a pretty heavy black line, so it kind of makes a difference size-wise. You may find it adds 1/8 of an inch, and that 1/8 of an inch can kind of, you know, creep up on you. All right, so we only need one of these flaps, and then we need one back. So same thing with the, if you're going to cut out the elastic pocket, or the elastic flap, it has another interior corner there, so you place it on the fold. There's a notch right here, but you don't do that on the elastic. You don't have to worry about that. I mean, on the lining. And now let's turn this so that it's facing us to do this corner here. Line this all back up. Now push in, lift up your paper and your fabric, and then either go straight out or straight in from that corner there, just like that. And this way you make sure that you get all those threads cut right there and you don't go into your pattern. All right, that's our elastic flap. And for the pocket flap, this is the only piece I think I put the fold on the right side of the pattern piece, and that's just so that we had the markings for the notches there. You don't draw this box on the lining or on the outer flap. It's just there as a illustration. I can feel something in there. Oh, it's just a piece of paper. Just making sure it's not a pin. Alright, that's your pocket flap. And then now we just have our back. And same thing. I think what I'll do here is cut off a piece of fabric just for this. Like this. I like to try and keep the biggest piece of fabric left in my stash. Alright, so here we go. This one has the handle markings, and that one is definitely one I made a mistake on an earlier recording of this lining cutting, so you don't need to do any of the notches or the drill holes for the lining. You just need it for the outer. So just ignore these and these. There we go. And now we just have this piece here. You place this on the fold. Now, if you can, I would print out 2 of these, of each of these pattern pieces, and then tape it together so you have one long piece of paper. It makes it a lot more accurate. Alright, so you only need the notches for the water bottle sleeve on one of your sides, either the left or the right, meaning there's only one side, but I just mean on one side of your sides. And you can notch both if you want, just when you're, just in case you put your side on there one direction and you're like, wait, I wanted the water bottle on the other side of the bag. Just mark both sides, that way when you're sewing it together you can remember which side you want to put it on. This is the corners of the bag. Depending on how you sew your bag together, you're probably going to want those on both the lining and the outer. Just make sure you line them up. And then on the lining only, you need this notch right here. This reminds you to leave this open when you're sewing it together. That way you have a place to turn your bag right side out. And I should also note that, remember, that if this is a gray text, it needs a companion piece to tape to. All right. I think we're ready. You have all your lining pieces, and they're going to look a little different later on in the video, but I think you've got this. All right. All right, so for the outer fabric, I'm going to go through my little pile here. So I have my 2 pockets. I'm just going to put those right in my bin for now because those don't get outer fabric at all. And then I have my outer fabric pieces that didn't get lining in this pile as well. So let's just pull these off. And I know you're probably a little nervous to lose track of some of your pattern pieces, meaning like you don't want to take the pattern piece off of that cut piece already, but that's okay. We can just kind of do it one by one. This is a linen cotton canvas from Spoonflower. It's pretty weighty. Works really good for projects like this. So let's just do some of these little guys here. These are only cut 1. That's cut 2. This is on the fold. And when I have something like this that's only cut 1, but I have another piece that's similar in size, even if it's this angle pocket, or straight pocket, I mean, and these are the angle pockets, I just stack them up like that. That way I know I'm going to have enough room. Just do it like this. Let's set that one aside for now. We'll cut this piece of fabric off like that. And for the gusset pocket, you can hear that fabric, right? And now for the angle pocket. Remember, if you're aiming for some motifs, make sure you're thinking about that right now. For the angle pocket, this one sits on top, and then the straight pocket sits all the way at the bottom. So only this top angle pocket really shows the most on the bag. Same with the gusset pockets. Those are kind of front and center as well. Now this is the precious pocket, so we need this out of the fabric as well and on the fold. This is on the inside of the bag, on the top of the cord pocket, and then that whole assembly is on top of the laptop sleeve. And there's a notch right here. You just need that for a stitch line. You can set this aside. All right, so let's get our angle pockets here. Oh, that is not my fabric, is it? All right. Do our straight pocket here. All right, and we have our gusset pockets, which we have these fun interior angles again. Let's just put our weight on here. 2 layers is going to make it move around a little bit more. I always get my weight way out of the way of my blade because I can't tell you how many times I've accidentally touched the weight and it ruined the blade. All right, so now we have these corners. Now if you don't want to use your rotary knife, you can just use your scissors and cut straight in there. Just make sure you end at that corner. Just like that. I always pick it up and see if I got it all. And then if you're going to use your rotary knife, just pick this up, get as far in as you can. Now pick this side up a little more and cut away from the pocket. Alright, so make sure you keep track of what you need to cut and what you don't need to cut. So once something is done, you can put it in your bin or however you're organizing your things. And these are done. All these are done right here. And we'll eventually stack those up so that they're ready to go. All right, so we have the water bottle sleeve and angle pockets still. So that's 2 layers of fabric right there, so we know we can do that there. And probably the flap right there. And now we have some things that are on the fold, of course. We have 2 flaps that we're going to cut, the laptop sleeve, the front, the sides, the back, and here's what I'm looking for right here, this cord pocket. All right, it's about the same height as this back pocket, so we'll just kind of keep those together and cut this off. Now there's obviously a more efficient way to get some use out of your fabric if you want to lay out all the pattern pieces. I just don't have the space under a camera to do that, and so that you can still see what I'm doing. All right, so we'll just cut this chunk off right here. So none of this is on the fold right here. And now open this up because these are both on the fold. Just like this. It's the same thing. And sometimes you'll find that using the fabric on there is a little easier than the paper. But I like to make sure that I'm still cutting something accurately, so I try and use the pattern piece. Unless the fabric is a lot easier to handle. So for this notch at the back pocket, you really only needed to do the outer, and it says that right there. So we'll just do that outer. And these two go together, and this is a done piece as well. It doesn't have any stiffener or interfacing. I think that puts my fabric back right side up. Even though there's no one way, I kind of do try and keep it kind of the same, just in case there's just some sort of subtle thing. All right, here's the cord pocket. This piece is done. It has no other things to cut with it. And now we have our angle pocket, a straight, or the water bottle sleeve, and the gusset pocket flap. That doesn't need anything else either. Now, if you want two gusset pocket flaps, feel free to do that. You're going to probably have to use a little bit bigger seam allowance so that your flaps are a little bit smaller so that they both fit side by side and one doesn't get caught in the side seam. I'm always trying to turn things so that my blade can stay. When it's something I can easily manipulate, you'll see me move it. There we go. So now these are ready to go. And now we just have these pieces that are all on the fold here. So we have the front of the bag, the laptop sleeve, and the back. I think this is pretty wide fabric, so I can get all three on this piece here. And we're going to be able to do the side as well. I have a lot of this fabric, that's why I'm being a little bit willy-nilly. All right, so now let's open this out. And cut our front off. There's a really big selvage on Spoonflower fabrics, obviously. Oh my goodness. Here we go. And last one. So I just realized that I'm used to cutting fabric where I do the outer fabric first, and I just realized we marked our back handle placement on the lining. You don't need it there. Good thing I used washable marker. So I know, like, see this little repeat line right here? That'll be under the back pocket. So that works out really well. If you accidentally marked your lining for the handle, I think the laptop sleeve will cover it up. All right, so let's mark right here. You need this notch for the flap. And then you're going to need to mark your handle placement. Here, there, and if you can't see it, you can just use pins. Show you that as well. I usually drill a hole in something like that, but I won't do that today. As far as pins go, this is how I would do this. I would do it kind of like I do a dart. So I would poke in where that measurement or that drill hole is on both sides, just like this. Poke it in. And then I pull it apart. And now all my pins are in there. And I know where the pin went into the fabric is where the marking is. There we go. Okay, so now that's the back. And that needs interfacing stiffener or padding or both. So we'll set that aside. Off to the right. And we'll talk about that in a minute. All right, so now let's do our laptop sleeve. So again, like, you don't have to use outer fabric for the laptop sleeve. If you're getting kind of low on fabric or you're kind of just cutting it close, this is one of the areas where you could use maybe more of your lining or something else that coordinates. All right, so here we have our interior corner. You absolutely do need to cut these, so I mean, like, you actually do need this marking, so don't worry about it. Don't feel like that can change by the time you get to the sewing machine. You actually do need that. That also needs some other fabric potentially. Line that up. All right, so this one is the one we need. This front is the one we need the notch for the gusset pocket. And we need it facing the right side up. We do that little notch right there just for the gusset. And that'll make more sense when you're going to sew it. Okay, so this as well needs either interfacing or stiffener if we want it. And then we have our sides. I like to not cut things right in the middle of fabric, so I have the biggest piece left over afterward. All right, so here's our side. And these, like I say, these long, narrow pieces are always so dicey. If you have enough paper and you wanted, you could print out this twice, these two pieces twice, tape it together so you have a nice, long, straight piece. You're more likely, if you make sure that you've taped it straight, using a ruler, just kind of get that line all the way. You'll most likely have a better chance of having a piece that's perfectly straight, so when you go to sew it onto the bag, you don't have any dips or points right here. And I'll show you what I mean. All right, and so this one we need the webbing strap notch right here, which on the lining was the water bottle sleeve. And we need this corner right here. Don't need this right here, the one for the notches. And so now when we open this up, let's hope that we cut it pretty straight, because this right here, this little spot right here is a trouble spot where that fold was. So I want to make sure you don't get a point here and then a point here, and then your band is getting, your sides are getting a lot narrower than you planned. All right, there's our sides, and this also could use stiffener if we want. All right, so now we just have our flap. We're almost done cutting our bag. Going real quick, aren't we? So you're going to choose which flap you want, right? And so on the zip pocket flap, you just need to cut this on the fold and then use the notch as a place to guide where the lining lines up. So let's just cut. I'm going to cut this piece off like this. You're only cutting one flap, but I just did that so I knew what size I needed. All right, so we have our zip pocket flap, just like this. A lot of the pieces, the folds over here on the left side of the pattern piece. This one is on the right because I wanted to allow for this little zip placing. Now all pattern pieces are marked and designed as if the right side of the fabric is facing up. So if there were markings on this that you needed to deal with, you need to just make sure that you take into account that it's supposed to be with the fabric right side up. It just depends on when you're cutting it. So just anytime you're marking things, take that into consideration. This is a pretty big bag of things to have to keep track of. Don't want to call it advanced, but it is a little bit more than most bag patterns have on it. All right, so I'm barely getting enough there. I probably could have done better. So you get the idea. With the elastic flap, you're going to need to notch right here where the elastic goes. You didn't really need to do that on the flap as well. On the lining, sorry about that. I just usually cut the outer fabric first and I just missed that. So make sure you cut this out and then do your notch on both sides of this flap. And this is your elastic casing. It's where you stretch your elastic too. Okay, so now we have all of our pieces. And then let's talk about what we want to cut out of interfacing. So on some of these pieces, like the flaps and the sides, the front, here the front, and the back, you can make your fabric a little bit more hefty if you want to interface it. Just say you don't have a canvas handy or you want to use something that's probably traditionally not a bag weight fabric, you can interface it. If you really want to add some oomph, you can do stiffener or some sort of interlayer like that. Now for the back of the bag and the laptop sleeve, you can add a thin layer of batting to either of these, or stiffener can work, or just a few layers of fabric if that's all you have and you just want to get rid of some fabric you're never going to use. Anything to kind of pad your laptop if you want, but you don't have to. It's not much harder to sew. It doesn't really add a whole lot of difficulty. And if you're picking something fairly lightweight, it's not going to add to the weight of your bag in a significant amount. It does make it a little bit like more oomph in it, but I don't think it's something that detracts from the way the bag, it just gives it more body, honestly. All right, so now let's stack up our pieces. I do this at the beginning of the sewing video, so if you want to skip and go watch it there, that's fine as well. So I like to stack my things by the way I'm going to sew them. And hopefully I'll remember how I did the sewing video so that we do this in the same kind of way. So I'm going to pull all my lining pieces out. I know, little nerve-wracking. Pull all my lining pieces out. So this is the front, the back, the sides. And I'm going to put those together. Front, back, sides right there. Put the entire laptop sleeve with the front, back, sides lining. I'm going to set these aside for now. You're going to want the cord pocket to go in this pile. So that's the front, back, sides lining, and the laptop sleeve. You're going to want the precious pocket. Where's that at? Here's the precious pocket for the EpiPen or whatever precious item you want to keep in there as well. And let's see, that there. The water bottle sleeve can go there as well. And now you're going to get out your long zipper and you're going to put it with this pile as well. And I think that's this pile right here. This is the pile with the most stuff in it. I'm going to pull everything out of my bin here. I'm going to stack it in here the way I'm going to sew it. So this is the lining and everything for the laptop sleeve and the water bottle sleeve and the zipper. All right, so we've got that. And next I think is let's do the flaps next, and we'll put that under there. All right, so you're going to need everything for your flap. So you need the outer flap and the lining flap, and if you're doing the stiffener or the interfacing, hopefully you've attached that as well. And then if you're doing the elastic flap, you need your 2 pieces of elastic for that. If you're doing the zipper flap, you need the shortest little 6.5-inch zipper for that, and you need your pocket linings. Okay, so here's your flap right there. Now let's put our lining and all that on top of that. Sometimes what I do as well is I will fold things like this so that it's this nice little bundle. In factories, they will tie this and keep it just secure, just like that. So like that. Now I'm going to look at my back. So here's my back pocket and the back pocket lining. The 1-inch webbing right here. And I think that's everything for this. Yep, that's it. Put that in there. I think I'm stacking these in a different order than the sewing video, so pay attention to that one. And now we're going to grab our sides right here, and so we're going to take the 2 webbing ends, whether you did 1, 1.5, 2-inch right there, your 2 webbing, your strap ends, and the loops, your strap, and your 3-bar slider. That's everything right there. And that's everything for that. So those all go together. I know your hardware probably won't stay together, so you can probably put that together in a different bundle. Now we're going to look at the front of our bag, which is everything we have left here, hopefully. We have our straight pocket, our under angle pocket, our top angle pocket. 2 zippers go with those. Your gusset pocket flap, the elastics go with that, and they all go with this front right here, just like that on top, and then your binding. Are you ready to sew this? I know that was a lot of work right there, but I know that you can just do this in bite-sized chunks and in chapters, and that's how I designed the sewing video. I may have layered this a little bit differently, but you can rearrange this, maybe just keep the little bundles, put them in little bags, whatever you want, tie a piece of ribbon around them, whatever it takes, and just label them, and then you're going to be set to go. And I know it's going to turn out really amazing. So thanks for designing such a great bag, and I hope that you really enjoy this process. It's a really good skill building process. So thanks.